On September 7th, 1987, in the waters off the Florida Keys, 68-year-old Walter Benjamin and his 69-year-old wife, Joanne, set out in their boat to spend the day together, like they had so many times before.
I guess you could say we were childhood sweethearts. I first slept with her when I was 6. When our little brother was born, my folks took me over to her house, and they dumped me in her bed. So I had to marry her to make an honest woman out of her. But we've known each other all our lives.
Walter and his wife Joanne shared a special love for each other and for life. On that late summer day, they were planning to go scuba diving together, as they often did.
Before we go into the water, we always check each other's equipment to make sure that her regulator is proper, that it's working. She's got her air zone and vice versa. She checks my air and makes sure that mine's working, so we know everybody's ready. Then our custom was to proceed to the front of the boat, and we meet at the mooring line, and then we go down together. We never went down alone. When I got around to the mooring line, Joanne was sort of laying face down in the water with a snorkel in her mouth instead of a regulator.
No, you don't have your regulator in here. Come on. I got it. What's wrong?
And I lifted up her head and gave her a regulator to put it into her mouth. She couldn't accept it. She said, I can't breathe. And that's the last she said, and she was just absolutely gone at that point.
Help! Somebody help!
Getting her around the boat was easy.
I need help!
Getting her into the boat
Help me!
was almost impossible, because we had to go up a ladder.
Over here, help! Help!
I was struggling in the water, trying to hold her up, get rid of my gear, so I could get up on enough of the ladder to pick her up and get her in the boat, or push her up into the boat. And I couldn't do it by myself. I just couldn't do it.
Laurie McLaughlin was on a marine sanctuary boat in the area.
I was out on patrol with one of the officers, and we heard a gentleman yelling out for assistance. He was actually in the water with his wife, and they were at the stern of their boat.
I need help!
We went up to see what the problem was, and immediately realized that we had an emergency situation here. Somebody was in trouble.
Just luckily, the park ranger came by in his boat, and a young woman from his boat jumped off, swam over to our boat, and helped hold Joanne up. But I was just trying to get her out of the water. That's all I could think to do. Get her out of the water, get her in a boat, then we can work on her. I didn't know whether she was alive or dead. She was absolutely limp.
Two of us took her, he picked her up, and I pushed from the in the water position. We got her out of the water and into the bottom of the boat. Once he got her on board, and once I was able to climb up in the boat, we did strip her down of her dive gear so that we could then continue on from there.
She's not breathing. Check the pulse. No pulse. I'm going to start CPR. Bill Green, call.
Sanctuary officer Bill Green called for help.
Luke E5, Bay Honda base. I radioed into the Bay Honda State Park base and notified them of the medical emergency and had them send an ambulance to Dolphin Marina.
Medic 5, Big Pine Rescue, Big Pine Rescue. Signal 49, possible cardiac arrest. Reference an elderly female. CPR is in progress.
Jay Marzella was spending the day with his wife and brothers, not far from Walter's boat.
We were all in the water, and as I looked up, I noticed the particular boat that we had spotted as we came into the area, and alongside of it was the park ranger. So I left Joe and swam over to my boat just to get a better look, just to see, was it something routine or was it something more serious that they might need some help?
I just responded without even thought. You just become a machine and you just go with this programming that you had been trained with. So it didn't even occur to me that, oh, all of a sudden I'm going to have to use CPR for the first time. It was just get in there and go with it.
Blue Key Ranger, Blue Key Ranger, Blue Key Ranger. This is the Phoenix.
After hailing him 2 or 3 times on the radio and getting no reply, I shouted to him.
Officer! Officer, do you need any help?
Yes, we need CPR assistance.
At this point, I shouted to Joe that we need CPR.
CPR!
I swam down to Mark, tapped him, motioned him to come up.
Both Joe and Mark Marzella were firefighters, trained as EMTs.
We didn't know who was injured, what was happening. We just knew that somebody needed CPR at the time.
We need help. Hurry.
I saw an elderly lady lying on the deck of the boat, very obviously unconscious.
When we continued,
all I could think was that this poor man had lost his wife right there in front of us, right before our eyes.
It had been nearly 5 minutes since 69-year-old Joanne Benjamin suffered a heart attack while scuba diving. Her husband, Walter, could only watch helplessly as Laurie McLaughlin performed CPR, and other divers in the area joined in the effort to save his wife's life.
Hey! What can I do?
We need oxygen.
Good. Hang on. Good. Hurry.
My brother Joe and I climbed in the boat immediately, and we started 2-person CPR. My brother Joe started on the ventilations, and the woman that was there helping, she continued on with her compressions. I requested the oxygen, and I gave it to Joe, who was already up at the victim's head.
1, 2, 3.
The patient at the time looked very serious to me. I realized when there was no pulse, she was cyanotic, pupils were dilated, that she was either in cardiac or respiratory arrest. My experience turning somebody around from being that close to death has been very small. I've probably performed CPR on 20 to 30 people in the last 8 years, and I can only remember 4 that have survived.
No pulse?
Okay, we got no pulse. CPR. We need to get her to shore. Go on up front and cut loose the anchor.
Okay.
as the 3 boats headed toward shore, Joanne had been without a pulse or heartbeat for nearly 10 minutes.
I thought that I may have lost her. And I didn't think about it as much getting her in the boat as I did on that terrifying ride into shore.
All I could think was that this poor man had lost his wife right there in front of us, right before our eyes. And that all we could do was just to take her to shore, and that hopefully someone at the hospital could do something for her.
Breathing in. Still working on it, sir.
I kept saying, have you got a pulse? Was her heart beating? Is she breathing? And they were so busy they couldn't tell me what was happening. I know I was scared, and I'm still scared, and I still get choked up. I'm sorry. I still get all choked up when I remember what happened.
Rescue units arrived at the marina and began preparing for Joanne's arrival.
We set up our IV lines, we set up our life pack defibrillator, and got the board and everything ready on the gurney. There was not a lot of communications between us and the boat, so we really didn't know what kind of condition she was going to be in when she arrived at the dock.
It was a real gray situation. I had little hopes of her coming out of what she was deeply into. The oxygen was starting to get low. It wouldn't have been many more minutes and the oxygen would have been empty.
It was actually just a few minutes from the dock. We saw that the color started coming back into her face and her lips, and we could see that the oxygen that we were pumping through CPR through her system was actually having a positive effect.
Starting to breathe on the wall. You got me all right? No, I got a pulse here. All right. You got me all right? Doing fine. Be all right, man.
As soon as they said, we have a pulse, oh, man, I'll tell you, that was something else.
all of a sudden, it was just a wave came over me that just changed, just absolute sadness and this wonderful feeling of joy. And happy for the man who did not lose his wife. Happy for those in the boat who were working on her, that they had just absolutely saved her life from what they had done, from the skills that they had had. It was wonderful.
I realized that what had happened was a true success story, and that CPR really is something that everybody needs to know because it can really work, and it comes in handy at times when you least expect it.
Joanne was taken to a nearby hospital where she was treated for cardiac arrest and released after 10 days. For the past 2 years, a surgically implanted pacemaker has helped Joanne to lead a more normal life.
I think I am so lucky to be alive today, and not a day goes by that I don't think about how lucky I am that all these people were around just at the right times.
Joanne and Walter have become close friends with her rescuers.
Seeing Mrs. Benjamin now is a really good feeling, knowing that we helped her and helped her family, that they can still enjoy her and her them. It could have been 2 other people in the same situation, and they may have never contacted us ever again. What really made it different was how they responded with such great thanks and friendship warmth to us afterwards.
I'm grateful to Laurie, I'm grateful to the ranger, I'm grateful to the bottle of oxygen, I'm grateful to the ambulance drivers, the doctor in the hospital, the Marcella bus. I'm just grateful for the whole kit and caboodle that I've still got my wife.
Joanne and Walter Benjamin recently celebrated 47 years of marriage.
My almost fatal accident that day has brought us much closer together. While it was a terrible thing to have had happen, the happiest part was that I got feeling good again and having a good time in life. I just have so much to be thankful for.
She's my life. I can't say how much I love her, except that she's my life.